Today's lesson is called The Story of Alcestis and Admetus. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff.
I am Roger. Today we've got a story from Greek mythology, and we've covered a lot of these stories in our program before, but now we have a new one starring Alcestis and Admetus. Okay, that's the story we're talking about today. I think it's a love story.
Now, I've heard of Zeus. I've heard of Apollo. I have heard of Orpheus and Eurydice. I have not heard of Alcestis and Admetus, but you know what? Greek myths are usually pretty juicy, okay? Usually something really dramatic happens and a lesson gets learned. Gosh, I think the Greeks were actually responsible for the creation of drama and tragedy and stuff like that. So for that reason, hey, every once in a while, we'll dig into a Greek myth. Anyways, before we take a short break, the name of the story is The Story of Alcestis and Admetus, and we'll get started right after this.
The Story of Alcestis and Admetus. A young king by the name of Admetus was well known throughout his kingdom for his great kindness and generosity. He frequently assisted those in need. So, when a poor beggar arrived at his gate looking for work, Admetus gave him food and clothing and sent him to tend the sheep without a second thought. Little did Admetus know that the beggar was actually the god Apollo in disguise. Soon after, Apollo revealed himself and said that he would help Admetus should he ever become desperate for aid.
大家好，第一部分我们看到单字 disguise 这个字是名词，指装扮、伪装，像是 in disguise 就表示乔装、伪装。例如 The spy was in disguise when he met with the president. 那名间谍乔装与总统见面。或是 Some thieves put on disguises and tried to rob the bank. 有些小偷穿戴上伪装用品并试图抢银行。另外，这个字也可以当动词，指伪装、掩饰，像是Bianca tried to disguise the bruise on her arm by putting makeup on it. Bianca 试着用化妆来掩饰她手臂上的淤青。再补充两个相关片语。第一 blessing in disguise 表示塞翁之马，焉知非福，因祸得福。举例来说 When Peter missed his flight to Japan, it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Peter 错过那班去日本的飞机，结果居然因祸得福。第二Disguise oneself as somebody 表示佯装成某人。例如 The queen disguised herself as an old woman and gave Snow White a poisoned apple. 皇后假扮成老妇人，给了白雪公主一颗毒苹果。接着我们看到形容词 desperate 指迫切、需要、极度渴望的、拼命的。例如 The plane crash survivors were desperate for food and clean water.飞机失事的生还者迫切需要食物与干净的饮用水。或是 Larry was desperate to find the gift his daughter wanted for her birthday. Larry 拼命想找到他女儿想要的生日礼物。
Okay, let's talk about our story. Here's the first part. It's all about a young king by the name of Admetus. Okay, so that's one of the characters in our story for today. A young king, and his name was Admetus, and he was well known throughout his kingdom for his great kindness and generosity. So yeah, sometimes we hear about kings who are mean and cruel and they beat people and they torture people and stuff like that. But this guy is different. He's a nice guy. He was known for his kindness. His kindness, of course, refers to the fact that he was nice and kind to other people. And he was also known for his generosity. So generosity is the noun form here. It just refers to how nice you are to other people and how willing you are to give people things. And if you are such a person, we describe you as being generous. Tom is a very generous person.
Tom is a generous person. Every Thanksgiving, he goes to the shelter and he hands out turkeys. Yeah, it's Thanksgiving, everyone's hungry, and then Tom shows up and all the homeless people, they cheer. Yay, Tom, yay. Thank you for all the turkey. We are going to be stuffed tonight. We're going to have a great turkey dinner, all because of you and your generosity. Yes, generosity is the noun. Generous is the adjective. Anyways, more on this young king. He frequently assisted those in need, so when a poor beggar arrived at his gate looking for work, Admetus gave him food and clothing and sent him to tend the sheep without a second thought, i.e., he didn't hesitate one bit. He immediately acted. Hey, buddy, you need work? Here you go, I've got it for you. Oh, and in addition to a job there, here's some food and some clothing. Go ahead and get to work. You've got the job, pal. Hey, I didn't even give it a second thought.
And little did Admetus know that the beggar was actually the god Apollo in disguise. Ooh, that's a good lesson for us all. We should be nice to everyone because you never know who that low-life person is going to turn out to be in the future. They might actually judge you on your generosity. So yeah, here it says, little did Admetus know. We could say that he had no way of knowing this. He did not know at all who the beggar really was.
Apollo is in disguise, i.e., you can't tell that it's actually Apollo. Okay, maybe he's put on a fake mustache. Maybe he's put on dirty robes so he looks like a beggar. One way or another, he has changed his appearance so that you cannot recognize him. Now, during Halloween, you put on costumes and you might look like you're someone else, but you wouldn't say, yes, I'm going trick-or-treating in disguise. No, a spy, though, who's trying to infiltrate a government might change the way they look so that people don't recognize them, and in that particular situation, you could say that that person is in disguise. By the way, the set of clothes and stuff like that that you wear when you are in disguise, you can call that your disguise.
Yep, to be in disguise or to wear a disguise. So soon after, Apollo revealed himself and said that he would help Admetus should he ever become desperate for aid. So yes, he revealed himself. Ta-da! Actually, it's me. I'm Apollo. I'm not really a beggar. So he revealed himself. He let the world know his secret there. And then I guess he was grateful for what Admetus had done. He said, hey, if you ever become desperate, should you ever become desperate, then I will come to your assistance. I will help you out. And here we've got the word desperate. That means you really, really need something. And if you don't get it, you're going to be in big trouble. I'm desperate for a job. If I don't get a job, I won't make enough money and I will starve to death. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson. Let's move on now to the second part. We'll listen first.
Not long after this, Admetus fell in love with a woman from a neighboring kingdom, a fair and compassionate princess known as Alcestis. Many suitors wanted to marry Alcestis, but were prevented by her father's impossible demands. Admetus's encounter with Apollo had given him an extra dose of courage, however, so he put on a brave front and went to see the king.
第二部分我们看到单字 compassionate 这个字是形容词，指富同情心的，表示同情的。举例来说 Michael is a compassionate person who always wants to help others. Michael 是个很有同情心的人，总是会想帮助别人。另外，这个字去掉字尾 ate 就成了名词 compassion， 指同情、怜悯，像是 People need to show more compassion for those who lose their jobs. 大家应该对失业的人展现更多同情心。
Okay, let's learn some more about Admetus, a young king who is very kind and also very generous. And in fact, at one point in his life, he was so kind and generous to the god Apollo in disguise that Apollo now owes him a favor, is going to give him some aid. Anyways, let's read on. Not long after this, Admetus fell in love with a woman from a neighboring kingdom, a fair and compassionate princess known as Alcestis. So there you go. It says that this person is compassionate. If you are compassionate, it means you feel bad for people. You can feel bad for people or feel pity for them.
So, yeah, that sounds like the kind of person that I would like to have as princess of my kingdom. So, no wonder Admetus fell in love with her. And, of course, lots of other guys were interested in her as well. We've got lots of suitors here. So many suitors wanted to marry Alcestis, but were prevented by her father's impossible demands. So here we got the word suitor. Suitors, of course, are people who are trying to get the girl, and they're all competing against each other.
So there you go. Many suitors did want to marry this particular girl, but her father had impossible demands. Now, here we're using the word demand as a noun, okay? Usually you use the word as a verb. I demand you do this or that. That means you have to do that. I'm telling you to do that, and I'm not going to take no for an answer. Get to work. Do that thing. Here, though, an impossible demand might be, okay, you want to marry my daughter? Hey, show up with $1 billion, okay? And then maybe I'll consider let you marrying my daughter. That's an impossible demand. How am I supposed to come up with $1 billion?
Yeah, that does seem to be an unreasonable demand. Something more reasonable would be, well, he's got to be handsome. He's got to be over 6 feet tall. He's got to have a salary of at least 100,000 NT dollars per month. Those might be some reasonable demands that a father will make of his daughter's potential suitor or fiancé or future husband. So here, of course, the father, hey, he recognizes that his daughter is a prize and she's worth a lot. So, of course, he has lots of demands on those suitors, okay? He's not just going to let her marry any run-of-the-mill guy that she met at a party somewhere or met in a laundromat.
There you go. So he has impossible demands, and I get this as a father. I want to make sure that whoever marries my daughter is going to be a good guy. Maybe I won't have impossible demands, but I will have some high standards for whoever my daughter chooses to marry. Anyways, Admetus's encounter with Apollo had given him an extra dose of courage, however, so he put on a brave front and went to see the king. So he put on a brave front. Maybe inside he was trembling and scared, but he put on a brave front. He looked brave, looked courageous, and then he went ahead and he saw the king there. Now, why did he feel brave a little bit? Remember, he had had an encounter with Apollo, a god. So, hey, that's got to make you feel pretty courageous. By the way, an encounter is just a meeting with someone, usually a chance meeting with someone.
So, yes, he's got an extra dose of courage. A dose of something is usually something we use in reference to medicine, a dose of medicine, for example. But here you've got a dose of courage. You've just got some extra courage. You're normally kind of brave. You're normally not really afraid of things, but this is extra here. You've got an extra dose of courage, and he's very confident here. He can put on a brave front, and he can win the girl's hand.
Anyways, let's go ahead and take a short break, but when we come back, we'll be wrapping up the first part of our story for this month.
The king agreed to Admetus's proposal under one condition. He must leave and return in a chariot pulled by a lion and a wild boar. Faced with the near impossibility of the task, Admetus became desperate enough to ask Apollo for his assistance. Apollo agreed, and the two lovers were soon married in a joyous wedding celebration.
第三部分，我们看到名词 boar， 意思是野猪。例如 It's actually quite dangerous to encounter wild boars in the woods. 在森林里遇见野猪其实是一件蛮危险的事。接下来我们看到单字 assistance， 这个字是名词，指协助、援助。我们可以说 Lori found her pet dog with the assistance of her kind neighbors. Lori 在好心邻居的协助下找到了她的宠物狗。最后我们看到形容词 joyous， 指快乐的、欢乐的。我们可以说 The birth of their first child was a joyous occasion for the young couple. 他们的第一个孩子出生时，对这对年轻夫妇而言是一个很快乐的时刻。
Okay, let's take a look at the final part here. It says the king agreed to Admetus's proposal under one condition. So yes, you can have my daughter's hand in marriage, but I've got one condition, one thing that you have to do. He must leave and return in a chariot pulled by a lion and a wild boar, which is kind of like a wild pig. A chariot, of course, is how they got around in those days. It's pulled by horses, and you can either sit or stand in a chariot.
Yeah, I'm starting to get it. This guy does have impossible demands. $1 billion? Okay, that's a lot of money, but it's conceivable that you could earn that amount of money over a lifetime. But here this king is saying that you've got to return in a chariot pulled by a lion and a wild boar. Anyways, faced with the near impossibility of the task, Admetus became desperate enough to ask Apollo for his assistance. Please, Apollo, help me out. And thankfully, Apollo agreed, and the two lovers were soon married in a joyous wedding celebration. So this wasn't just any old wedding celebration. This was joyous, full of joy and fun and entertainment.
That's what joyous means. Sometimes a family dinner can be a joyous occasion. And of course, when you have a wedding, it's a big celebration when people are happy and they're celebrating something happy like someone's marriage. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Let's listen now to our Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第一部分提到 Admetus 这一位年轻国王以乐善好施闻名，常常帮助有需要的人。当一个贫穷乞丐到他门前来找工作时， Admetus 想都没有想就送他食物衣服，还派他去照顾羊群。好，文中用到 tend 这个字 T-E-N-D， 它是用来表达照顾、照管，那么之后是接名词。好，那么 tend 也可以当作不及物用，我们常常会用 tend to somebody 或者是 tend to something 来表达照顾、照料某人或某事物。举例来说， Mary loves to spend time tending to her garden. Mary 喜欢花时间照顾她的花园。好，那我们读到下一句，他写到 Little did Admetus know that the beggar was actually the god Apollo in disguise. Admetus 根本不知道这名乞丐其实是阿波罗神乔装的。好，那这个句子呢，是使用带有否定意思的副词 little 来当作句首的倒装句。我们来学习这样的用法。当否定副词或是否定副词片语摆在句首来做强调的时候，我们必须将助动词或 be 动词移到主词前面来进行倒装，那就会形成否定副词或是否定副词片语加助动词加主词加动词，或者是否定副词或否定副词片语 加 be 动词加主词的句型。好，那常常会摆在句首的否定副词有 nowhere 表示任何地方都不怎么样， little 是少到几乎没有， seldom 或是 rarely 表示很少， hardly, barely, scarcely 等等表示几乎不怎么样，还有 never 表示从不怎么样怎么样等等。那么常常摆在句首的否定副词片语则有 by no means 表示绝不怎么样， not for a moment 从未有一刻怎么样怎么样，还有 no more, no longer 可以表达不再， in no circumstances 或者是 under no circumstances 表示无论任何情况也不怎么样。好，那我们举例来说，原本直述句的例句是I have never doubted your love 我不曾怀疑过你的爱。我们如果把 never 移到句首，那么这时候它的助动词 have 就必须移到主词 I 的前方，就会形成倒装 Never have I doubted your love。 好，那我们再造一个例句哦。They were barely able to make ends meet 他们几乎无法维持生计。好，如果我们要把这个带有否定意思的 barely 移到句首，那么 be 动词 were 就必须移到主词 they 的前方，形成倒装，那就会念作 Barely were they able to make ends meet。 好，那特别注意，要是原本直述句当中没有助动词，那我们就必须配合主词人称和动词时态，自己加入适当的助动词。像课文句子它原本可以写作 Admetus knew little that the beggar 怎么样怎么样，那因为这边没有助动词，如果我们要把 little 移到句首，那就必须根据时态在主词的前面加上助动词 did 来形成倒装，那就变成我们看到的课文句子 Little did Admetus know that the beggar 怎么样怎么样。好，以上是今天的重点整理，我们来回顾今天的单字吧。
Generosity. On arriving in Peru, Joseph was amazed by the generosity of the locals. Disguise. The celebrity didn't want to be recognized, so he walked around town wearing a disguise. Desperate. The young girl was so desperate for attention that she began to cry. Compassionate. The most well-respected leaders and politicians are wise, compassionate people. Demand. Strict but fair, Tom's university professor made a number of reasonable demands. Encounter. While jogging in the mountains, Ray had a frightening encounter with a snake. Assistance. Fiona had been waiting in the hospital lobby for hours before she was offered any assistance. Celebration. Gina intends to invite only her closest friends to her birthday celebration this year.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you guys enjoyed reading and learning along with us. I am Jeff.
I am Roger.
See you next time.